Over the years, the way sex is portrayed on TV has evolved, and that's what we're diving into today. So I'm giving a warning for any little ears that may be close by. We good? Okay. We went from Lucy and Ricky sleeping in separate beds on I Love Lucy in the 50s to shows with more graphic content we see today, like Normal People, Bridgerton, and Girls, just to name a few. As the saying goes, sex sells. Bridgerton is one of Netflix's most watched shows ever. These shows are heating up and showing more explicit sexual content than previous generations are used to seeing. A Kaiser Family Foundation study found that 23% of shows in 1998 showed sexual behavior, and in 2005, that number jumped to 35%. The data is limited on how many shows depict sexual behavior today, but there's no denying there's more of it. There's even been an increase in full frontal male nudity and the use of prosthetics for those parts, which is new. And this trend isn't just driven by changing cultural norms, it's also driven by changing technology. As we've seen the streaming wars take off, we have to keep in mind that cable providers and streaming services don't have to stick to the same federal laws against nudity and sexual content that network TV does. The Parents Television and Media Council is a nonprofit that tracks sex on TV and aims to limit kids' exposure to sexual content in entertainment media. We sat down with Melissa Henson, PTC's program director, who's been keeping her eye on the entertainment industry trends and the impact they have on American culture for years.
What we're seeing with streaming is that there's a real hard dividing line between content that is strictly for adults and content that is strictly for little kids. And there's not an awful lot that's out there that's good for the whole family to watch together. Or even for kids, say, between the ages of 10 and 16 or 10 and 17. There's just not an awful lot out there that reaches that sort of middle segment. You know, it's either really elementary or it's really mature, and there's not a lot in the middle.
While sometimes explicit sex scenes on TV are shown sheerly for entertainment value, there have also been shows and movies that have been able to educate people on sex. Newsy entertainment correspondent Casey Mendoza gives us a closer look at some of the milestones TV shows have made when educating the audience about sex.
Sex education.
Don't have sex, because you will get pregnant and die.
As sex education varies between different states and local school districts, recent TV shows and films are filling in the gaps for some teens and young adults.
This is actually going to be incredibly awkward.
In 2018, a Healthline survey of more than 1,000 Americans found that only 33% of people between the ages of 18 and 29 reported having some form of sex education in school. And a 2020 study from the Journal of LGBT Youth found that a majority of gay and lesbian college students expressed that their formal sex education was lacking and that they sought out or received information from other informal sources to supplement their learning. These informal resources included internet forums, popular films, music, and TV shows. And when it comes to television, teen dramas like the long-running Degrassi have been paving the way.
I think I'm pregnant.
Since 1987, when Degrassi Junior High first debuted, the franchise about students at a Canadian junior high and high school highlighted the issues of teen pregnancy, abortion, STDs, and sexual assault. In 1992, the U.S. Department of Education even developed a sex education curriculum that used episodes of Degrassi as starting points for classroom discussion. Degrassi now spans 5 different series across 3 generations of viewers, representing teens and families of various cultures, as well as sexual and gender identities, and its newest iteration is slated to debut on HBO Max in 2023.
I just want to do this the right way. We can go to the clinic together. It'll be romantic.
As Degrassi served almost like the blueprint for sex education in teen dramas, series for older viewers like ABC's How to Get Away with Murder made history with its own advocacy for safe sexual health within the LGBTQ community. The series centers on a group of law school students and their professor, and in 2018, it became the first network primetime series to highlight pre-exposure prophylaxis, more commonly known as PrEP, a medication that reduces the risk of spreading HIV.
This is so romantic.
It will be in 20 minutes when you get your results and we go home to celebrate.
The series' discussion of PrEP, as well as the representation of a character living with HIV, was praised by organizations like GLAAD and Greater Than AIDS for the way it educated audiences without stigmatizing the issue. How to Get Away with Murder ended in 2020, but sex education in TV has continued.
This is a sexual literacy tutorial.
Today's teen dramas like Netflix's new Heartbreak High or the critically acclaimed and aptly named Sex Education are poking fun at the limitations of real-life sex education in schools, while advocating for honest and informative conversations about sex, consent, body positivity, and healthy relationships.
Sort of taboo or dirty. Which it isn't.
Sex Education tells the story of the son of a sex therapist who gives relationship advice to his peers. Both critics and health experts have praised the show for its informative humor and nuance about the realities of sex. The fourth and final season of the series is expected to release next year. Casey Mendoza, Newsy.
All right, many thanks, Casey, for breaking that down for us. Now, we've been talking about the history of TV and sex, but there's one new development on this topic that we haven't touched on yet. It's an important profession that helps make sex scenes on TV shows and in movies feel safe and comfortable for the actors. We're talking about intimacy coordinators. Now, before your imaginations run wild, let me break down what they actually do. These coordinators choreograph intimate scenes, monitor the set, and make sure actors have modesty garments to keep them from being fully exposed. Labor union SAG-AFTRA defines an intimacy coordinator as an advocate and liaison. Coordinators also say this also helps take pressure off of filmmakers, so they're not solely responsible for making sure everyone's comfortable. This is a fairly new job in Hollywood. We started to see intimacy coordinators on sets after the Me Too movement gained momentum in 2017, when sexual abuse allegations against top film executive Harvey Weinstein came to the forefront. HBO was the first network to announce it was hiring intimacy coordinators. They started in 2018 with the second season of The Deuce. Netflix hired its first intimacy coordinator for sex education in 2019. Other platforms like Hulu, Starz, and Amazon jumped on the bandwagon too. A lot of sex scenes we see today have an intimacy coordinator as a part of their crew. At the end of 2020, there were an estimated 50 to 60 trained intimacy coordinators. But because this role is still so new, there have been issues with intimacy coordinators getting onto sets who are not properly trained. Coordinators say it's important to vet them before hiring. Recent headlines like Emily Carey, who plays Alicent Hightower in the Game of Thrones prequel House of the Dragon, saying they appreciate having an intimacy coordinator on set, speak to the impact they've had. With that being said, there's still room for improvement in the intimacy coordinator space. There's a lack of representation among coordinators, which can make it difficult for coordinators to understand how different types of people show intimacy and love. To talk about this more, we're bringing in an intimacy coordinator to dive further into this topic. We have with us the CEO of Intimacy Directors and Coordinators, Jessica Steinrock. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
For starters, can you tell us why it's so important to have intimacy coordinators on set?
Yeah, absolutely. As you might imagine, filming an intimate scene is an incredibly vulnerable position, and not just for the actors, it's also for the cast, for the crew, for the director, for the camera person, right? Everybody involved is really telling deeply vulnerable stories. And the same way we have a stunt coordinator who handles fight scenes and makes sure that the punches are fake and no one actually gets hurt, having an intimacy coordinator there is a way to support the actors in telling the story of an illusion that something is happening when in reality it's not actually happening.
We understand the importance of having an intimacy coordinator for filmmakers, for the actors themselves. As we're seeing more sex on TV, what purpose does this serve the viewer?
Yeah, we are there to also make sure that the story gets told well. We help make that illusion look better. We help the actors feel safer, and that means we're going to get better storytelling from it. A lot of the times I like to really reinforce that I'm there to help everybody do their best work. And an actor isn't going to tell the best story if they're also worried about their own physical safety during the process.
We know there's a lack of representation among coordinators and sometimes actors in these scenes. What, in your view, can be done to really bridge that gap and help diversify this very important industry?
Yeah, absolutely. Having the right person on the right project is really important to actor safety and to crew safety, and then again, to authenticity of telling the stories that we're trying to tell. I run a training company called Intimacy Directors and Coordinators, and part of our mission is to create accessible pipelines into this work. And one of the ways we do that is by offering a certification. Now, it's most important just to be qualified, so we don't recommend like an industry-wide certification, but by having an accessible and equitable process for application, we hope to really encourage folks to train in this discipline and then have support in entering the field, which is often run by who you know, friends of friends. And we're really trying to break down some of those informal networks by supporting more intimacy professionals getting jobs on set.
Since this is a newer profession, what progress can still be made in this industry?
I think the fact that really this work has only been around for a little while in kind of the common vernacular of set life, that we have a long way to go, even in just making sure folks know what's my responsibility and what's not my responsibility on set. So a lot of times when I walk onto a set, I'm still teaching people how to interact with my role. And so I really look forward to a world 10, 15 years in the future where I'm there, folks know how to work with me, but also they are building up their own consent-forward culture. So the intimacy professional is no longer the sole person who's responsible for navigating a consent culture on set, but everyone in the room is responsible for creating that culture together.
Remember, folks, when you tune into your favorite movies or TV shows and there's a sex scene, just remember that there's a Jessica Steinrock that's behind all of this, making sure that things look and go according to plan. Jessica Steinrock is the CEO of Intimacy Directors and Coordinators. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a real pleasure talking.